remember it like it was yesterday. 2011, the death of Spider-Man. This wasn't just a one-off what-if non-canon event. Despite being completely undone almost immediately, this felt real. Because this wasn't 616 Marvel, this was Ultimates, a universe built on being more grounded than mainstream Marvel. Think edgy Marvel comics for adults. And Ultimate Spider-Man was arguably the definitive version of the character, and they killed him, and it hurt. But like a phoenix rising up from the ashes of Peter Parker, Miles Morales was born. Now it was far from an easy ride for Miles. He faced a lot of backlash, and I vividly remember debating fellow comic book fans on forums back in the day on his existence alone and what it meant going forward for Marvel. Now, Miles Morales was in many ways an experiment, and his existence would signal a new era for Marvel Comics. We began seeing an influx of these legacy characters that basically treated superheroes like mantles to be passed down to newer generations, the all new, all different initiative. I think it's fair to say this attempt to rebrand Marvel as a whole failed quite badly, with many of these characters being rejected. Now, Miles had the privilege of being first of these characters in this modern Marvel context, and also in being an Elseworlds character, so he actually had a lot of people rooting for him from the jump, but even more so in light of the all new, all different shift in 616. Folks who maybe hated Miles historically were now looking to him with a fondness, wondering if maybe they treated him too harshly. After the Secret Wars event in 2015, the only consequence I can truly recall in that Marvel Comics reboot was that Miles is now a 616 character, and he coexists alongside Peter Parker in the main comic continuity. He was also appearing in a lot more cartoons like Ultimate Spider-Man amongst others, gaining a lot of traction, but none of this would be as monumental as his big screen debut, just 7 years after his creation, in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This film in many ways put Miles on the map. For starters, it was a phenomenal film, critically and commercially. It really caught a lot of people off guard, and visually, this was groundbreaking in animation, beginning a whole new wave and renaissance for the medium. We saw so many films adopt a more distinct and stylish approach as a result, instead of the samey, stale Disney Pixar fluff, and the sequel only took things to even greater heights. But perhaps most importantly, these films re-established Miles' character as his own. After many years of being called a Peter Parker carbon copy, finally Miles felt unique and he was accepted. And nothing truly cements that more than starring in your own AAA blockbuster video game. This is the potential of Miles Morales. Now, much like both Spider-Verse films, which tackled themes of expectation and belonging, this game is very much about Miles forming his own identity and attempting not to linger in Peter's shadow. Considering this is very much an origin story, retreading the same narrative ground here is expected, but much like my relationship with the first Spider-Man game, I'm really intrigued to see what the sequel has in store for Miles in terms of character arc. Just on a gameplay front, the promise of Insomniacs Spider-Man is already leaps and bounds ahead in Miles Morales. It's no secret Miles has more powers than Peter, and this is an area where in the comics it caused some frustration with readers, feeling the Venom strike was OP and lazy writing because it got Miles out of any situation, and it can absolutely be all those things, but in a video game especially, it just makes for some really awesome takedown animations. Your Venom blasts are pretty much the foundation of combat in this game, and it's all really satisfying to pull off. You spend nearly the entire game absorbing electricity and ultimately even becoming a human nuke by the game's climax. Invisibility or camouflage is also something Miles has in his arsenal, which kind of works best as a stealth clutch, which both makes stealth in this game more viable but also a lot easier and maybe in turn a little less fun. But the real meat and potatoes of any Spider-Man game is the swinging, and the system in the first game already felt flawless, but this is an undeniable upgrade. It not only feels better, but the finesse or lack thereof really just makes for a satisfying visual when spamming air tricks. I hate to say it, but Miles has swagger, and yeah, it's of the exaggerated variety. It's not all sunshine and daisies here though. Despite being a more condensed, tight overall experience, coming in at around 16 hours for me to get 100% completion versus the first game which took me around 40, this game isn't all killer no filler. In fact, the caliber of side content in this game kinda left me feeling a type of way. I'll elaborate more shortly, but all the putting out fires, saving cats and general friendly neighborhood activities were all fine in moderation, but the bulk of this game's side content is either finding samples to make a shitty beat for the Prowler,
that shit's ass, bro.
Fighting holograms that result in a recycled Vulture boss fight, or all the samey open world stuff you do anyways, but for feasts, so that's the narrative pull this time. It's all super forgettable here, and feels like a downgrade on the first game's side content, which also offered generic fodder to be fair, but alongside some genuinely interesting, well written and satisfying questlines like the Tombstone one, Taskmaster, or Spider-Man, etc. This game's narrative backseat doesn't stop there though. The actual story here is far less compelling than Marvel's Spider-Man. Whilst Miles' presence in the story is cool, and I think they handled his relationship with his mum and Ganke well, the only truly satisfying narrative beats here for me were the opening with Pete and the Rhino, the very early underground stuff on the bridge, and then the Prowler stuff, which had a really awesome climax to be honest. Everything else though, The Tinkerer is far from a beloved Spider-Man villain, so the reinvention of the character here was actually kind of interesting for me. Sadly, I didn't really care for long. I feel like they had something here, and I do appreciate the dynamic between Miles and Finn, but the late game shift is just so abrupt and feels kind of forced, like the game didn't want to take the time to truly justify the clash, so it's kind of leaning on a misunderstanding ignorance combo pack. But like I said before, this is a much shorter game, which is good because the story is much less interesting, but also bad because maybe more time would have helped to flesh things out a bit more. Regardless, I did really enjoy my time with this game. I couldn't help but play Sunflower and What's Up Danger while swinging through wintertime New York on multiple occasions throughout my playthrough, and I genuinely felt satisfied by the game's climax. When comparing it to the first game, I want to be fair and recognize this is factually a smaller project, more of like a side quest to keep people fed and entertained until Spider-Man 2 came along. But on the flip side, Insomniac's main man said himself that he considers this to be Spider-Man 2, and I'm kind of treating it that way. There is an appeal in Miles Morales as a character, kind of in presence alone allowing Peter to grow, to be whole and not caught up in this more light-hearted, friendly neighborhood save and catch shtick forever. Whilst Peter takes on the role of the more mature, experienced Spider-Man, Miles can finally fill that void for the teenage webhead. He's got his guy in the chair, he's got his shitty beats to make, etc. You know, it all just kind of falls into place. It's a long road ahead, and it's really something to look at a character like Miles who's got under his belt a AAA blockbuster video game, a critically acclaimed Oscar-winning film franchise, a flurry of cartoons, albums, comics galore, not to mention an IRL NPC, and still only be scratching the surface of his potential. This has been the Game Burrow. Thank you for watching.